Hi, I am Marilyn Anderson Gift, and today I will be showing you how to make Kransekage, which is a Danish dessert used for special occasions and graduations and weddings, but especially for weddings. So to start, the first thing to do is to prepare the pans. I have metal rings. There are also have Teflon rings. So they have to be buttered and then dusted with breadcrumbs. So this is soft butter at room temperature. And it's important to get the butter all the way around. Make sure you get the butter around the inside and around the outside. And then all you have to do is sprinkle it with breadcrumbs. And these are just dried breadcrumbs that I used a little miniature food processor to grind them really fine. And this prevents the dough from sticking to it. It makes it easy to release once it's baked. There we are. Now we have 18 completed rings, and we're ready to go on to the next step. Okay, the next step is to prepare the dough, and it consists of 1.5 pounds of almond paste and 9 ounces of sugar and 3 egg whites. So what I do is when I buy one of these cans, I weigh them out in 1 pound packages and then either freeze them or refrigerate them until I'm ready to use it. So this one is 1 pound and this one is 1/2 pound. So the first thing will be to do is to put that into your stand mixer. So I'll put in the paddle. Turn it on and let it mix until it's all clumped. So the next thing you add is the sugar. And that is approximately 1.5 cups. It's a little less than that. So, and you can also use a digital scale. Now it is a nice crumbly texture. It's well mixed. So now we're ready to add the egg white. These are 3 egg whites. The egg whites should be at room temperature. So now you can see how it looks. It's well incorporated. It kind of comes away from the side of the bowl. Okay, now the next step is to fill your cookie press. So I cranked it out about as far as it'll go, and I'll fill it with rubber scraper. I like kind of a narrow scraper because it goes down into the cylinder. Covered so it stays moist, and put on the star tip on the end, and it screws on tightly. And then I'll start to fill the rings. This is such a simple way of doing it. My mother used the same press and the same rings, and she didn't have a stand mixer, a big mixer, so she spent a lot of time just working it by hand. And so I'll cut it, and then it's a little bit too long, so I'll just snip a little bit off so you have a nice fit. Okay, now we are ready to use the parchment paper for making the rings. I have the number 19 because there are 18 rings. So this is the next ring in sequence. So I'm going to use a little wet paper towel to put under this that kind of keeps it from sliding around. And I will do it just like I do with the rings. And I'll try to center it on that outside line, because the more perfect circle you have, the nicer appearance you have in your finished product. So our next step is to make the icing, and that's traditionally known as royal icing. It's made with egg white and powdered sugar. Instead of using raw egg whites, I choose to use meringue powder. This is a Wilton brand, and the ratio is 2 teaspoons of meringue powder to 2 tablespoons of water. That's for 1 egg white. So we are going to do 2 egg whites. So I will use 4 teaspoons of meringue powder. 4. And then this is a 2 tablespoon measure, so I need this twice. And another 2 tablespoons. That's the equivalent of 2 egg whites. And it works very well. So I use a little hand mixer. I beat it until frothy. And then I add about 2 1/4 cups of powdered sugar. And it has to be sifted powdered sugar. If it isn't sifted, you can get little lumps in that little writing tube, and that's not fun at all. The amount of powdered sugar you put in varies with the consistency you want. So it's about right. I think it'll work. Okay, our next step is to assemble the rings. And we have made the icing or the frosting. I have a pastry bag that we put it into. I inserted the chip, the bigger one, number 4. It seems to go on nicely, so that's what I will use this time. But they are available at any of your suppliers that have cake decorating supplies. And you screw that on nice and tight. And then I use a nice tall glass. And put the icing in. Take that out. Got a nice even stream coming out, which is what you want. This is a cake round, and it will fit in the bottom of the container I'm going to store it in and transport it in. It'll just fit nicely in there. So I happen to have this large cookie tin. So these were baked and cooled overnight, and I always cover them with a tea towel and let them become firm. So we're going to start with the largest one. And carefully. This is centered nicely on your cardboard round. This is the fun part. So you can start any place, and I'm going to make a zigzag design. And I use a Lazy Susan because I can just nicely go around. I try to keep the design pretty even. So that's the first round. So that one was number 23. So now I'm going to go to number 22. So it's this royal icing that holds it together. So it's like you're building a tower. So try to center that over the top. And I put a couple of strips of wax paper underneath so I can lift it and put it into this. Now that I have that bottom ring done, I can put it right in the lid of a big cookie tin. So this one I formed a little bit bigger than the bottom ring of the 18. And I'll try to center it. Make sure it looks good. These are some of the techniques that I've learned just to try to flatten it so that it's a little bit more stable. And the rings were baked on parchment paper on insulated pans. I used 350 degrees and about 12 to 14 minutes. They brown a little bit quicker than the individual tins, so you have to watch the oven. Some recipes call for a higher temperature. Personally, I like 350 or even maybe 325. I've used both because I like a more chewy texture to it. And it seems to be crisp enough on the outside and still chewy on the inside, which is kind of individual preference, but it's what I like. I think works well. Okay, so now we're ready for the next step. These were baked in the Teflon pans, and they were baked on a cookie sheet at 350 degrees for about 15 minutes, and that varies with your individual oven. You just have to experiment with that. Then to loosen them, I use a little soft edge spatula and loosen it around the edge. Lift it out very carefully. If it breaks, you can fix it. Perfect. Now that finishes that section. Okay, when you get to the event or the wedding or the whatever it is, you can bring a nice pedestal plate or some type of plate to display it on. I like the pedestal plate because it gives a little height. So I brought it in on the cake board, and then I put another cake board under it just to add a little interest. I put a little leftover frosting in a little baggie. I snip off the corner, and then I've got a little bit, put a little dab of frosting on it someplace. Take a look to see if it looks round. Looks pretty good. A little dab there, a little dab there. And then you put the top on. And I just take a little extra of the dough and make 2 little rings to fit on top. And it just makes it a little bit taller and very special. So now we're ready to decorate. Okay, now there's different ways to decorate the cake, and you can do whatever you want. If you put them up the side, you almost need some frosting to hold them in place. I'm just going to put a couple right here. Okay, another way to decorate it is to leave the cake plain, because it's just beauty in its own simplistic design. Danes like to keep things simple, so you can leave it simple, but they also love fresh flowers. So a very simple way to decorate it would just be to put flowers around the base, and I added a little white in there because traditionally the red and white is very Danish. This makes a very elegant, simple presentation.